I'm back, and I just moved, so it's goodbye to the old desk corner. I'm currently in front of some comic books. I've also got a terrible sore throat. It's not COVID, so don't worry. So yeah, it might get a bit scratchy during this video. I might sound a bit like Tom Waits in certain areas.
Well, they show movies that are not a big success anywhere else.
But don't worry, my usual high-pitched, sultry tones should remain.
Cheery boy.
Guardians of the Galaxy is a breath of fresh air. It's got me smiling again after that woeful Uncharted trailer and the disappointing What If. I am happy to announce that this will be a positive video. We haven't had one of those in a while, have we? I know, I'm sorry. But you know what? Don't be making terrible Uncharted movies. Then this wouldn't happen, alright?
What?
Last year, you may remember I made a video on the woefully disappointing Square Avengers game. My main gripe with the game was that it had plenty of potential and there was fun to be had throughout, but it was consistently hampered by the live service components that sought to squeeze players for every available penny they had on top of the 60 quid asking price. It was such a shame because I think a team-up Avengers game where you play as all the different heroes, set against an original story, could have been so good. The campaign was too short, the objectives too repetitive, the maps too barren, the whole thing felt lifeless and empty, and it was just crap ultimately. It was a frustrating experience because somewhere in Marvel's Avengers there was a good game to be found. Cut to this year and we have Guardians of the Galaxy. I think because of the similar photoreal MCU light look and the fact that Square Enix is plastered all over it, consumers thought they were in for an equally disappointing title. Thankfully, the Guardians video game couldn't be more different from the Avengers title. Pretty much everything wrong with Marvel's Avengers last year has been rectified with Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game, where one was an underwritten mess utilising the IP as a conduit for the worst blood-sucking trends of gaming today, the other is a confident, linear single-player experience that cares about one thing and one thing only, making you feel like you're in an interactive Guardians of the Galaxy experience. And whilst it might not be a perfect game, more on that in a bit, it is a perfect representation of everything people love about the Guardians' quirky cosmic world. If you're a die-hard gamer, you're not going to find anything in Guardians of the Galaxy that blows you away, or makes you think about third-person action in a whole new light, or anything like that, but it exceeds at giving you what it set out to do, a competent, fun game that knows exactly what makes the Guardians so much fun to be around. It doesn't reach the same heights as something like the Arkham series or the classic Spider-Man 2, but as superhero games go, this should be seen as one of the better ones. This is pretty much everything I'd want in a Guardians game, and I can't wait to boot it up again. Seriously, I wish I wasn't doing this review right now. I wish I was playing Guardians of the Galaxy. In the wake of this kind of single-player renaissance with games like God of War, Jedi Fallen Order, and the Spider-Man PS4 titles, I'm just so glad that we've moved past the era where EA said that single-player titles weren't worth the salt anymore. That was absolute trash, and I'm glad we've moved past that, because Guardians of the Galaxy is exactly what you want if you're someone that wants a lean, tight single-player campaign that they can polish off in about 20 hours and not have to rummage around for a million different side quests in a barren sandbox. Now, there's plenty of games that are massive and expansive and are sandbox worlds and have loads of side quests, and they're incredible. They're some of the greatest games ever made. Some of my favourite games of all time. But not every single game needs to be that, and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy excels because it is a linear game. There's no interconnectivity online, no scoreboard in sight, no tacked on multiplayer features. Games are often looked at favourably based on how much content they can chuck at your eyeballs. Often wide open sandboxes with a million side quests are seen as getting your money's worth, but Guardians doesn't care about trying to flagellate that notion. The roughly 20-hour campaign is long enough that you don't feel shortchanged, but simultaneously paced well enough to feel like an experience that doesn't outstay its welcome. For a 20-something with a full-time job who finds that these Skyrim-level sandboxes, more often than not, leave me filling out side quests in the middle of a 60-hour campaign, Guardians' brevity is a breath of fresh air. Sure, it would be cool to have full control of the Milano and the ability to go to Nowhere, Xandar, Contraxia and the like, but hitting iconic locales and meeting key characters feels just as satisfying in an experience that pulls you along and doesn't wait around. And besides, as cool as that would sound, I'm sure that would just end up with you driving around, doing fetch quests, walking around Contraxia that's like massive, but a lot of the buildings you can't go into, and you'll probably have to like keep topping up fuel to get to other planets, and you'll be playing for like 4 weeks straight, and then you won't play for a bit because adult stuff will come up, and then it'll be 6 months later, and you're like, oh, I spent £60 on that game and I've not even finished it yet because there's still so much to do. No, Guardians of the Galaxy does not do that. Non-linearity is very much overrated. Uncharted would not be improved by a bunch of side quests, and neither would this game. The levels are way smaller than anything in last year's Avengers, but they're packed with far more detail and life. They're paced better because the whole experience from start to finish works like one big roller coaster, rather than a bitty Fortnite-style piece of crap that chucks you into bland arenas to pick up nondescript loot. If this game gets a sequel, I hope they resist the urge to go bigger. Arkham Knight is cool and all, but Asylum and City benefited from smaller maps with more to do. So for my non-spoilery review, I would say that if you're someone that was disappointed by last year's Marvel's Avengers, if you're someone that loves the Guardians IP and wants to play around in that world and get to experience those characters in a fresh light, if you're someone that loves single-player focused experiences that are roughly 20 hours and can be completed with no frills, no messing, you can just polish it off in a week or two after work. And if you're someone that likes great combat, fun squad mechanics, and just a rip-roaring time, then you are going to have a lot of fun with Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game. And I am so happy about it, and it has just reignited my love for Guardians. I wanted to put on the movies this week and just surround myself with it. I've reread some of the comics I have, Guardians, and it's just been a lot of fun. And I think that speaks to the quality of the game, because if the game sucked, I'd probably be doing everything I can to avoid Guardians of the Galaxy right now. Kind of like Uncharted. I will be diving into spoilers for the game, but I'm going to try and keep it fairly light story-wise, just the broad strokes, and to be honest, things that you will expect to happen. I'm going to be showing off a lot of the levels and some of the cool combat mechanics, so if you really want to go in dark, then click away now. However, I don't think anything I spoil in this video is reason to feel that the game won't be fun or worth playing after the fact. I can sit here and tell you all about it, but it won't compare to going out and getting a copy of your own, especially if you're a Guardians fan. The game is surprisingly really well written, from the overarching story to little exchanges of dialogue you might miss. Because the dialogue is good and the characterisation is strong, it makes the whole thing flow so much better. By the time we get to the final turn of the game, there's some real emotional catharsis to be had. Peter Quill's story has always relied heavily upon fatherhood and broken family, and the developers run with those ideas but take it to a place the MCU has yet to. I was genuinely surprised at where this game was going within the first couple of hours, but I was in, and all of that stuff pays off in a satisfying way, and it feels like the game is one complete story, even though it does leave room to set things up for a sequel. If these characters didn't feel right, if the world didn't feel like the one we want, then it wouldn't matter how much fun the shooting is. I might as well be playing any other space shooter. I'm really fed up of the current insistence for every video game to have long stretches of walking sections. You know the drill, your player character stops to admire the vista, some dialogue exchange begins with you and your companions, and then suddenly you're slowly moving around for the next couple of minutes, locked at a walking pace so that the necessary exposition is doled out. For more on this trend, just go check out the Gaming Brit Show's video on it. That channel is underrated. I used to watch it when I was at uni before I even did full fat videos, and all of that guy's opinions are spot on. Go check it out. It's a fantastic channel. And he dusted Ratchet & Clank. I can't ever look at Ratchet & Clank the same way anymore. Anyway, my point is that Guardians does have a lot of sections where you are locked at a walking pace whilst your companions chat shit, but there's a simple mechanic that makes that much more palatable. Your companions are often arguing in much the same way as their plucky movie counterparts, and a dialogue tree will spring up in that instance. You'll often have to choose to side with one of the Guardians in an argument, or you'll be choosing what kind of statement to make as a leader. Will you crack a joke, focus on the positives, the negatives? Each situation is contextual.
What is your problem?
Lady Hellbender scoffs upon duplicity and dishonor. Your reputation is why she tests us.
Then we refocus here? We're here to trick some lady, not kill each other.
These moments pop up all across the game. The Guardians literally never stop talking, and it is a neat way of making a tired gaming trope feel less egregious. It reinforces the central premise of the game. You're not only Star-Lord, but you are the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that means your input is needed at every turn of the decision making. It is up to you to keep the squad happy. It is up to you to make them work as a cohesive whole. Sometimes these decisions are rather arbitrary, but reveal intriguing nuggets of characterization that make it feel worthwhile. Other times you'll be tasked with making actual decisions that matter and will ripple later on in the game. Like, you can get Drax to just toss Rocket across a chasm to help you out, or you could choose to show him some respect and not do that. It is quite funny though, I've done it both ways. Your team will never stop chatting, and that's the important reason why this game feels like it has a lot of heart. Most video game companions stand around silently whilst you search for secret areas, but the Guardians will complain and tell you to quit screwing around. The team's relationship makes the most ho-hum moments feel enjoyable. All of the Guardians' personalities ape what we've come to expect based on the movies. It is no surprise that Drax doesn't understand metaphors, and that Rocket loves to complain, that Gamora gets exasperated at a fellow Guardian's incompetence, and that Groot is, well, sweet and harmless, aside from when he's tearing apart bad guys. Most Marvel games owe a lot to the aesthetic and characterization of the MCU. It is no doubt a business decision. I doubt any company would be happy with the developers completely reinventing the mythos in the same way James Gunn did in 2014. But Eidos stick to the MCU Guardians enough to make it feel like a team you recognise, but deviates confidently where it wants to. There's talk of a war with Thanos and the Chitauri from years past, Quill's family tree house from Spartax rather than Ego, Mantis is far more powerful and headstrong than an MCU counterpart, Nebula, whilst not seen, is characterised as more of an out-and-out villain, and it's unclear at this time whether or not she will go down the same redemptive path as Karen Gillan's iteration. All of these changes are welcome and seek to differentiate this universe from the movie timeline, but it never feels like it's just for the sake of it. It really works in the 2014 movie for Peter to get the name Star-Lord from his mum, but here it feels right that he gets it from his favourite band instead. Both work for the context. You may remember in my Star-Lord video that I said that Peter Quill is a man that is not Han Solo, he's a man that wishes he was Han Solo. So he tries to be like that kind of cool laid-back archetype, but constantly screws it up. And that is typified in this game by the fact that you have a original Kenner Chewie doll that sits on your cockpit, and you mention it a couple of times and you refer to it. It's the kind of reference that isn't made anymore, because now references are all about being front and centre and being part of a big, huge moment where the audience can get like a release of endorphins, whereas this is the kind of reference that I think works. It's a Chewbacca doll, it's cute, it's nostalgic, and it tells us a lot about who Peter Quill is as a person. What I like most about the story is how it weaves effortlessly with the gameplay. Each of the Guardians unlock their ultimate abilities through completing an important moment in their character arc. The game will even tell you this when you unlock said ability, so it feels really neat and earned when your abilities progress. And you feel like you're pushing that progression on not only yourself, but your team around you. The choices you make feel like things to really consider, even when it's not always entirely clear what sort of repercussions they will have. The team dynamic is at the heart of both story and gameplay, something that Marvel's Avengers never did in any meaningful way. By the end of the game, when Groot is building bridges of his own accord, and Drax is insisting that Rocket deserves more respect than being used as a catapult, it felt like my Guardians had really managed to set aside their differences. It captures the fraught family dynamic that made the movie so popular. The level design is fantastic across the board. The designs of each planet and settlement you venture to contrast significantly from the last, featuring a whole range of different colour palettes and structures. Everything is wonderfully alien and weird, and it's always a joy to run through them. There's enough hidden areas to feel like it's worth going off the beaten track, but the level design is focused enough to keep a consistent pace. You'll be chucked in a firefight 1 minute, the next you'll be directing your team to get past a locked door or climbing an impossible to reach spot, and it all weaves together in a really nice way, so you don't get bored of one thing versus the other. This game honestly feels like a mishmash of all of the games I personally love. The camaraderie and banter as I climb and explore reminds me of Uncharted, the squad mechanics feel like a more stripped back version of Mass Effect, and it's even hard not to think about dear old Isaac Clarke when you switch between electric guns and flaming shots whilst floating around in zero G. In fact, I'd say that pretty much all of the gameplay in Guardians is akin to something you've played before, and that's not such a bad thing. The mechanics are competent. I'm buying this game because I want to jump into a fully realised version of the Guardians mythos, not because I want it to reinvent the gaming wheel. Not everything has to be a AAA polished, wheel reinventing masterwork to garner my attention. In fact, I really wish more games would just take mechanics that are tried and tested and give us more adventures set in franchises we love that have never gotten a really truly great video game adaptation. It's not like the movie landscape where story comes first and franchises need to be fresh and innovative and need to evolve to be worthwhile. A lot of cool cinematic franchises would translate well into third-person action adventures without too much flim-flam. Seriously, has no one thought to just rip off God of War and give me a T800 John Connor game? Who wouldn't love to run around bashing the shit out of other robots with their fists and a shotty whilst protecting the future leader of the Resistance? You could go through all different kinds of time periods in Terminator canon, and you could end up in the future war, and I'm trying to imagine it would look like that Terminator 2 3D going through battle through time thing. You know what I'm talking about, the thing that James Cameron made that no one really talks about, but it's awesome. Fight the fucking T1 million at the end, it's like a giant crab. I used to do a video on this. Eidos gets this. They recognise that the IP is what will make this game feel special, so it's wise to take tried and true mechanics and leave the real focus on making sure it captures the core essence of why the Guardians are such a beloved team, their core contradictions, what makes them likeable, what makes them exciting, what makes them funny, and these elements are both in the cutscenes and the story, as well as the gameplay, right down to the combat and the abilities that you unlock. Avengers featured some of the worst outfit options in a video game ever, many of them being palette swaps of the starting costumes draped in corporate branding. Who wants to play as the Virgin Media Avengers? Yay! Mummy, for my birthday, can I have the Virgin Media Captain America?
Contractor, no. I will not bow to any sponsor.
Thankfully, Guardians has a bunch of collectible outfits across the levels, and they're all ones you'd actually want to don. There's original designs for the game, comic book outfits, and even the MCU skins are available.
Oh, the trousers with the holster and stuff.
I like everything but the logo.
Yeah, the logo sucks.
It was fun watching Rocket in cutscenes with a full suit and shades, or unlocking a cool Gamora outfit based on the 2015 run.
Oh, sweet. Fucking Kate. Oh my god.
I also gotta say, Gamora's white armour default in this game is awesome, and I really wish she had something like that in the MCU. I've got to come clean. I love Gamora, I think she's one of my favourite characters in the MCU, and I think in literally every appearance she's been utterly fantastic. She's one of the most consistent characters in the series, and I can't wait to see what happens with the new Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. However, I cannot stand her outfit. I think it's really lame. She just looks like a pirate to me. The trench coat, the black leather. I just don't think it looks very good. I don't like the sort of like metal high heels she has. I just think the whole thing looks really goofy. And in fact, the bio for the outfit in the game sort of says like, yeah, I guess this is like a movified version of my outfit because I'm not wearing any armor and I'm just sort of in like some skimpy leather. It's like, yeah, it's both not very functional or very nice to look at. We've moved past the 2000s era of black leather outfits for superhero movies, and I'd just love to see Gamora in something a bit more colourful, basically. It's a minor gripe because I love the character. I think Zoe Saldana's fantastic in the role. She kicks ass. I just wish she didn't look like Jack Sparrow sometimes, you know? Like, give me some sweet white armour. That What If armour, the Thanos armour, was so unbelievably cool. I was actually really sad that its presence in What If kind of eliminates the possibility that she would ever take Thanos' armour in the main MCU timeline and don that. Maybe the What If series was a way of teasing that outfit for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I can only hope. Honestly, I'll take anything over the pirate stuff. Initially I found it really strange that the game allowed you to lock onto targets. What is this? A third-person shooter from the PS2 era? But the game doesn't really play like a third-person shooter. You're not so much strafing and aiming your guns as you are locking on, dodging left and right and rushing up to foes with a hefty smack. The way Star-Lord fights also reflects the movies. He's a gunfighter, but he often ends up using the quad blasters like melee weapons, as well as using his gadgets and firepower at close range. The developers channel this in the combat. The game wants you to jet around and flip over opponents, relying on your elemental powers and your teammates' abilities as much as your standard lasers. My playstyle with Uncharted always involved the steel fist wherever possible because it's awesome, even on the hardest difficulties because I'm an absolute mad lad. So I was very pleased to unleash it in this game to maximum effect. It never really gets old firing off an elemental power up, whittling their health down to a thimble before finishing them off with a steel fist.
I was almost roadkill.
Speaking of the squad, using their powers is fun and intuitive. Unlike the aforementioned Mass Effect, which, aside from some hotkeys, elects to pause the action, which is the right decision for that game, I'm not dogging on it. Guardians of the Galaxy has a quick select menu of 4 powers for each Guardian that you unlock across the campaign. You hold L1, select your Guardian with one of the corresponding face buttons, and then one more tap selects the power you want. Time slows down, but you really want to waste no time making a selection, and the rhythm with which you select these powers only gets faster the more adept you get with the game. In virtually no time at all, you'll be leaping into a firefight, directing Groot to trap everyone in vines, then the very next moment you'll be getting Gamora to zero in on a tough target, whilst Rocket unhurls some rockets for crowd control. This system is largely great, and makes you feel like you have all of the Guardians' unique abilities at your fingertips, in spite of never playing as them. My only gripe is the layout of each Guardian's powers. Take a game like X-Men Legends or any of the Ultimate Alliance games. Every character would have a power mapped to their X button, their square button, their circle button, and their triangle button. You could customize the layout, sure, but generally, the X power would be a basic special move, the square would be more of a buff, the circle would be a more widespread move, and the triangle would be your special. This meant that even when you selected an entirely new character, you'd have a rough grasp of what buttons did what. In Guardians, the button mapping is specific to which button you had to choose for said character, so if it's L1X to select Rocket, his special move will be L1 Triangle, but since it's L1 Triangle to select Gamora, her special move is triggered with L1X. Does that make sense? So Drax is selected with Circle, so his special is mapped to the square button. Groot is selected with Square, so his special is mapped to the circle button. There were times in an intense firefight where I would unintentionally select the wrong move for a character because of the buttons I had just pressed to get the equivalent move for another character moments before. Again, you get used to it, and by the end it wasn't a massive issue, but I found the default placement quite baffling. Surely it would have been easier to grasp if everyone's special was mapped to L1 Triangle, for instance. However, overall the combat is really fun, and I always felt ready to keep blasting the moment a firefight was over. The later levels chuck waves upon waves of baddies at you, but I didn't feel like it was padding the length because of how fun it was to play. It seems like a no-brainer, but I was really pleased that this game had the necessary superhero oomph that you need from the combat. You blast and smack enemies and they go flying, the sound design is meaty, and you feel powered up even when you're at the start of the game. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I've never really enjoyed the Insomniac Spider-Man combat because I think it lacks that oomph. Spider-Man is a character that is infamous for pulling his punches so that he doesn't turn people into soup, and yet even with a bunch of upgrades, the punches and kicks just always feel weak to me. The combat is fun at times, but I never really feel like Spider-Man. I think the sound design is really lacking from helping you feel those punches in those games. Conversely, there's more welly in Peter Quill's attacks than Peter Parker's, and he's supposed to be a regular old human being with some space tech. Still, nothing tops the Arkham combat system for fluidity of movement and making you feel like the character in question. Perfection. I could do a whole video just on how awesome it is to beat people up as Batman in those games, and I will do it if you want it. Guardians of the Galaxy never had a big musical bent in the comics, obviously, because how would you do that? It's completely non-audio. But in the movies, James Gunn had the wonderful idea of having Star-Lord, aka Peter Quill's mixtape be kind of like his umbilical cord to his mum and to Earth. And Meredith Quill shows up a lot in this game for a series of flashbacks that are actually really beautifully handled and really sell you on the relationship between him and his mother, and it becomes like sort of a key cornerstone for the relationships that we discover in the present. But there is, of course, loads of great music tracks.
Yes!
The soundtrack is fantastic. You got Tainted Love by Soft Cell, you got A Flock of Seagulls. That was one of my favourite moments when A Flock of Seagulls dropped and I was in the Milano trying to escape like a load of falling debris.
These are good music choices. Avenue. I never thought I'd meet a girl like you. Meet a girl like you.
I was like, A Flock of Seagulls in a video game. This is amazing.
With auburn hair and tawny eyes.
There's Everybody Wants to Rule the World. You've got Elton John, Blondie. It's bangers left, right, and centre. You even get Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. I have not heard that song in a proper context outside of a Rickroll probably since 2007, so it was actually really awesome, and it reminded me what an absolute tune it is. It's great, it's great. I feel like people only remember like the first couple of moments of the music video, but the whole thing's great. Rick Astley's just dripping swag in the music video, you need to go check it out.
You know the rules, and so do I.
All the songs pop up feel like legitimate tracks that Peter Quill would listen to in the movies, and therefore it feels authentic to this universe. And not only that, but the mechanic of listening to the music within the actual levels is really neatly handled, and it plays on that whole theme of leadership.
Guys, huddle up!
In certain hairy moments, you'll be able to huddle your team around you, where they'll tell you their fears, their trepidations about the battle, or maybe even their excitement.
Get it? Those creeps out there, fighting them gets the blood pumping. Oh yeah. But if you listen to that pumping too hard, your heart takes a dive and the losing starts.
And it's your job to pick from two options as to what you're going to say to hype them up. And if you hype them up sufficiently, you'll get like an attack bonus, and a song will play.
Who's with me? Feel my wrath!
Nice one, Peter!
Oh yeah!
Not only is this a great way of working the songs into the gameplay, it also makes you feel like Star-Lord, whether you get it right or wrong. Because if you get it right, you feel like Star-Lord when he's at his peak, when he's a great leader. And if you get it wrong, you feel like Star-Lord whenever he fucks something up.
We're wanted men.
The assassin, rodent, and tree may well be criminals, but I have served my time.
I meant we're renegades.
So, but in both senses it kind of works. It's just funny when you screw it up, and normally they're like, yeah, you go Star-Lord, great, and they're just sort of like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'll see you later, see you in a bit.
Who's with me?
You are kind of wish we weren't.
Why?
I definitely feel like there's some X-Men fans at Eidos. The uncanny text that pops up when you start poning some space noobs. There's a brood in the Collector's Museum, and of course you fight the Wendigo.
I sense something, a presence I've not felt since...
I like what you've done with the place.
I love that the game supposes the Wendigo was blasted into space in the hope of getting rid of the curse for good, explaining why this earthbound X-Men foe would pop up on a random alien world. Maybe if we're lucky enough to get a sequel, more X-Men elements could fold in. Kitty Pryde did briefly date Quill in the comics, so it'd be awesome to see her pop up as a supporting character. I'm wondering if all these X-Men references are going to pay off in some way, either with like an X-Men game or an appearance in a future title. There was a really great discussion on Reddit about the ending, wondering if Nikki now has the Phoenix Force, which would be really awesome because then it would give a reason for the X-Men to cross with the Guardians, and the Reddit thread was sort of suggesting maybe they'd be sort of like opposing each other to try and get the Phoenix Force, or maybe Jean Grey and Nikki would come to bond over their shared experience with it. I'm like, all of that stuff sounds great. Give it to me. The X-Men, we've not really seen the cosmic side of the X-Men much in the movies, and we've obviously never seen them meet the Guardians on screen. So I think it'd be a really nice way of moving away from the movies even further and taking the story in a fresh direction. Also, it would just be great to have the X-Men pop up in it. Drax versus Wolverine, Storm versus Gamora, like, yeah, that sounds good to me. And on that note, I think you could do more Marvel games based around teams with you playing as just the leader and you having to sort of like manage the other superheroes and direct them and use them in like squad combat. I think that would be awesome. I think more superhero games, particularly team superhero games, don't have to have it where like you can play as every single character under the sun. That is cool, and I love those games for it. I love like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance stuff, and even before that, X-Men Legends. I was a massive X-Men Legends fan back in the day. So all that stuff has its own place, but I think this kind of experience is really fun, and you feel like you're controlling the team and getting to experience their abilities even though you're not implicitly playing as them. So yeah, I think it would be amazing if you do like a Fantastic Four game where you're playing as Mr. Fantastic, directing the powers of Sue Storm, Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm. I think that would be cool, and you could even take that to space. You'd have Earthbound missions, cosmic missions, plus you'd get a whole host of stretchy powers, like the big mallet hands, turning into a ball, you could glide, you could jump really high, you could swing. I just think elastic powers, Mr. Fantastic, Miss Marvel powers are awesome. I feel like, you know, why don't we see them more? Elastic powers. Come on, man, you could do so much with that. You could like make yourself taller, or like you could eat like 10 pies and then not be bloated. You could just like suck your gut in. You could make your dick longer, or just straight up do an X-Men game. I don't think you'd necessarily want to play as Cyclops because I think his powers are a bit more limited for the gameplay. You want someone like Star-Lord who can like essentially fly and has long range and short range attacks. So I think someone like Storm, who's often the second in command on the team, would be a great pick as the sole character you play as in an X-Men game. You've got icy blizzards, you've got tornadoes, you've got long-range lightning powers, which could serve as sort of like the third-person shooter mechanic. You can fly, and it would be cool to have like, you know, different X-Men on the team, like, but keep it small. We don't have to have loads of X-Men. Just do a team of 5 like what's in this game. You could have like Wolverine as your heavy, Jean Grey for telekinesis, Nightcrawler or Iceman or something like that. You know what? Chuck in a wild card, do someone like Banshee. What's Banshee been up to? Haven't really seen him since X-Men First Class. It really is the perfect Guardians experience, but as a video game, there are some shortcomings that hold it back. The biggest problem with Guardians of the Galaxy is the bugs. Multiple times throughout the campaign, the triangle button would get stuck on my screen, menus would disappear, things would not be triggered in order for me to like move to the next section. At one point I was playing around with a headless Star-Lord, another time I was walking around backwards because Star-Lord wouldn't turn around, which stopped me from going through a tight spot, meaning I had to restart checkpoints. I was restarting checkpoints a fair bit throughout the campaign, I've got to be honest. There's a moment where you go through a Dagobah-esque cave where you keep speaking and unintentionally selecting enemies to fight. If you just say nothing, you will be allowed to pass through. Well, I tried that the first time in my playthrough and it didn't work, leading me to think that there was another solution. I searched high and low in the cave, I got frustrated, I reset the checkpoint, and then by chance, on the second go, I just decided to forgo speaking again for no apparent reason, and hey presto, it worked! So that meant that the first time round, it just didn't trigger the next section. So it's a good thing I restarted the checkpoint and didn't run around for another 10 hours just so sure that the solution must be in front of me. The penultimate boss just froze, and I couldn't hurt him nor could I kill myself. I was just stood there for minutes until suddenly he snapped out of it when I had my guard down and he killed me instantly. This then happened again, the very next time I fought him. I had to run around the stage waiting, hoping the battle would continue, or else I'd have to start the fight all over again from scratch. Little niggles like this don't ruin the experience by any means, but it does take the sheen away from great moments. When I riled up my fellow Guardians with a huddle and charged into battle with an unexpected Rick Astley classic, I was overjoyed to be playing my very own Guardians Rickroll. A couple of minutes later, that boss glitch occurred and suddenly all the goodwill from the stellar gameplay evaporated. I really must stress, I don't want to put anyone off playing this game if they were tempted already because of the bugs, nor do I want to chastise IDOS for it. Games shipping broken has become a common symptom for an industry-wide disease. Studios are happy to release games with less finesse than ever before because, well, screw it, we can just patch it in post with a cheeky little update, right? Unfortunately, that means oftentimes the first week buyers double as game testers for the company. I shouldn't have to be one of the many people on the net complaining about these glitches for Square to patch later. Don't ship your game so buggy, and in turn this review would be a 10 out of 10.
Rocket! Blast him!
I think that's enough from me on Guardians of the Galaxy, the game. Go out and buy it. I've got a smile on my face. Positive vibes. No more disappointing things on full fat. Anyway, check back next week for my review of Doctor Who Flux. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Just before you guys go, I would like to make a little announcement about my Patreon. For years now, I've been doing Patreon in the same way, offering kind of like little rewards and stuff for each tier, like early access or like sending out the scripts. But, you know, I find more often than not, people don't really engage with this stuff, which is absolutely fine because it's just stuff that I dump onto there for you to sort of honour the different tiers. But I think it's apparent to me and from all the wonderful patrons that I've had over the years that I think people just give money to my Patreon because they want to support me and they want to see the videos continue. And like, I'm absolutely fine with that. And also like, I find it hard to meet the deadlines of certain things. Like sometimes I don't send in a script, or sometimes like I need to get a video out by a certain date to meet a sponsor and I've not had time to finish the early release. And for that I apologise. When it gets to the stage where people aren't really engaging with the rewards I offer on the tiers anyway, and it seems like people just want to support the continued growth of the channel, which I'm very appreciative of, I think it's just high time that I just take away all of the rewards. So basically, if you're someone that already gives money to me on Patreon and you feel like me taking away these rewards takes away the incentive to give me money, then stop giving me money. That's absolutely fine. I honestly, like, anyone supporting me at all with $1 to continue this channel, I find incredibly humbling, and I'm forever appreciative of it. But yeah, ultimately, the Patreon is one of those things that I find really hard to keep up with, and I find sometimes it eats into my time trying to get these videos out, and I would rather just be honest with you guys and say that if you want to support me, you can put in any amount of money you want. I'm a one-man show and I'm trying to make the videos happen, the Full Fat podcast happen, and I'm also trying to continuously make digital art on Instagram. And between those three things, it's really hard to then also keep up the Patreon as well for something that like people don't really even seem to be that bothered about. And honestly, I'm fine with that because the way I see Patreon is that it is just an outlet for you to help support the continued, you know, running of this channel. So yeah, thank you for giving me Patreon money. If you've never given me any Patreon money and you would like to become a patron to help keep the lights on, then please consider going to the link in the description, and I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, as I say, from henceforth, there will be nothing really fancy that I can offer on Patreon because I honestly just can't keep up with it, and I don't think anything I offer is really that worth it for you guys. It's also things that I would just happily give out for free, you know, like I'm happy if people want to read these crappy scripts. The other problem is, since I've been doing more stuff on camera, the scripts have been getting a bit more like notey. So as an incentive for me to give out the scripts, that's kind of dwindling as it is. It doesn't really make much sense for me to give out the scripts anymore because now they're more improvisational. In short, if you're already a patron and you want to keep giving me money, thank you, I really appreciate that. If you're someone that feels like you're going to be shortchanged from me taking away the rewards and you don't want to give me money anymore, that's honestly absolutely fine. I completely understand that, and there's no bad blood here. And of course, if you're someone that's never used my Patreon before and you would like to get involved so that I can keep making these videos for you, then please hit the link in the description below. But all you're going to be getting is more of this mug. I also kind of want to reposition the Patreon as sort of something that supports not only Full Fat videos, but the Full Fat podcast. But am I like... I don't seem laggy.
You seem fine.
Because Charlie's very silent, I can't tell if it's like he's delayed or not. And my Instagram page. If you want to support me doing any of those things, then Patreon would be a really good help for me. A big thank you to my full fat tier patrons, Dr. Cheekade and Craig Hurst. If you want to find me on Instagram, you can find me at full_fat_videos. And if you want to find me on Twitter, that's at fullfatvideos. Until next time, do something with milk, I guess.